Now, I would be, of course, remiss if I didn't mention my boy Jaylen Brown, because as everyone knows who watches this show, Jaylen Brown's one of my favorite players. And for him to put the performance that he put forth in this Game 7 was disheartening. One of the worst, it was the worst performance of Jaylen Brown's career by far. And really, the difference between last year's Eastern Conference Finals and this year's Eastern Conference Finals was, one, Miami's offense was significantly better this go-around because their role players have been significantly better this go-around. Again, like I mentioned, they have, I believe, over 4 shooters shooting over 40% from 3. That's a recipe to win ball games. And then number 2, Jaylen Brown has been significantly worse than he was last year to this year. This year, he averaged 5 less points per game. Was at 24 last year, was at 19 this year. Was shooting 48%, almost 50% from the field, 40% from 3. This year, 36% from the field. I believe 16% from 3. It's a recipe to lose. It's a recipe to lose when Jaylen Brown has been one of the most consistent player for the Boston Celtics. For him to go out and completely shock, I feel like not just me, but the basketball community with this type of performance really comes at, I guess not Riv, but Riv even has admitted on multiple. Riv has also admitted on multiple accounts that Jaylen Brown is consistent. He's never been
scoring. The scoring caught me off guard. Him not scoring.
But to wrap up, because I know I spoke for a while, this is a super unfortunate event for the Boston Celtics if you're a Boston Celtics fan, but all credit to Miami Heat. I wrote them off after Game 6. I said, Game 6 is your chance to win. You don't win this game, I find it very hard to believe you will win Game 7. For them to lay the beating that they did to the Boston Celtics in the Garden is a testament to how great this team is. You can't sleep on them. You can acknowledge that the Nuggets may be a better team, but the heart and the resilience that the Miami Heat play with, you can't count them out.
Acknowledge me.
And Drew, there was a point you made there where this postseason, the lineup of Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, Bam, and Jimmy is a plus 35. And I think what we saw in this series was, as you alluded to, not only did the Miami Heat's role players outplay the Boston Celtics thoroughly, Caleb Martin outplayed the Celtics stars, at least Jaylen Brown. And they say it's a make or miss league. The Celtics shot 30% from downtown. The Heat shot 43%. And we saw that in the Milwaukee series too. It's them sustaining what they've done. Whereas in the Knicks series, the series where they can get away with shooting like dog shit, they were able to still get it done. But there's one point
Speaks
with
on
the
your
Celtics.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
Your Knicks are shit.
We didn't play out to our potential.
Yeah,
we played. We're in the finals.
I'm sure.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
there was one point
you would have beat the Celtics.
You would not.
Yes, you would have.
At the start of this video, the Celtics offense is way too reliant on driving kicks to score. And I think the reason why that's been further exaggerated is because Jaylen Brown, number 2, that's playing off these swing actions, these secondary actions, is not a good playmaker. And we've talked about this on the show. There's not many championship caliber teams that don't have an elite facilitator where their number 2 is a negative passer, a negative ball handler with lack of feel. And in this series, especially with the hand and wrist injuries, we can give Jaylen Brown, a little bit of a pass for not shooting well. That's more of an outlier. We've seen he's a good shooter, even if it's wax and wings for years. We can't give Jaylen Brown a pass for not communicating on switches. That's unacceptable for a 7-year wing. Like, that is very simple stuff where it's a switch. You don't communicate. You don't point. You don't do anything. It's like, well, now you're giving up wide open threes to Gabe Vincent. Now Caleb Martin's teeing up one open look after another. Maybe that's playing a small role in them finding a rhythm in games 1 and 2, games 5 and 6. And I think as the series went on, that lack of detail by guys, especially in Jaylen Brown, who may be a great scorer, but what else are you bringing to the table? Because Kyle Lowry's not doing that. Same with all those other role players. To see Jaylen Brown meaningfully regressing defensively is the reason I look at him and say he is nowhere near worth $300 million. He may be a great scorer, but it's the details like that that are really concerning as he goes into his late 20s.
Now, we're going to get into the Jaylen Brown topic in a bit because I agree with you, John. And I just want to touch on this point that Drew made, a rebuttal. Maybe Dehls and Drew were not expecting a bad Jaylen Brown game. I think if you've seen Jaylen Brown against this zone all series long, you knew all he does is dribble into defenders and then have a turnover. So I'm not surprised.
Never have been vocal about Jaylen Brown until he started struggling.
We've always been vocal.
Jab in the
Who's we?
Riff.
Yo.
Have we not been vocal about Jaylen Brown's regressed defense all season long, on ball and off the ball? Have we not mentioned that? did it not show up in this series and also in a Philadelphia 76ers series? The reason why it went to 7 games was why? Because he left Harden open in a corner for 3.
Okay, if you want to look at that,
but no one's ever spoken about his offense. No one ever did.
The reason why Harden was able to get off 40-point games is because they were allowing switches and he was soft switching on things. So I don't want to hear that. Jaylen Brown's screen navigation is not good.
Games 2 and 3, Jaylen Brown was fighting through screens and guarding Harden.
And let's not act like
I can bring up numbers. That is not an issue.
And let's not act like we have not been vocal about Jaylen Brown not being a great playmaker. When Drew brought up the second option stuff, I quickly told him how many second options are bad playmakers, and we were naming a ton.
That wasn't until this series that you started to mention and be critical of Jaylen Brown.
I think we all know it's obvious he's not a great playmaker.
No, that I agree with.
He's not a great playmaker. So I think that came back to haunt the Celtics in this series, and it's not a surprise. I mean, when Tatum goes down and now Jaylen Brown, who in the Philadelphia series, if I'm not mistaken, he was being vocal about being more demanding of the ball. Well, now it's your moment. Now Tatum is gone. Nasty, it's your moment. You're supposed to take the lead. You're supposed to show everybody why you deserve your own team because the best player got injured and Jaylen Brown didn't step up. It's simple as that. And I agree with the not paying him $300 million. Listen, should the Boston Celtics pay Jaylen Brown $300 million versus is he worth that are two different questions. To the first question, the answer is yes. To the second question, the answer is no. He's not worthy of that money. He's not that good of a player to warrant a supermax contract. But the Boston Celtics are in such a great position for the future because Tatum is the number one that you can afford to give Jaylen Brown that contract. But if Jaylen Brown was in any other team and he was the best player and that team had to make that decision, if they made that decision of paying him, it would have been a major mistake. It would be a major mistake.
So are we going to get into this topic? Jaylen Brown, $300 million?
Let's do it.
I think, and I think, John, you brought up something interesting. You said not many teams can get away with their secondary guy not being a good playmaker. And there's only a few that come to my mind, like the Lakers, Anthony Davis. He's not the greatest playmaker. They have LeBron, though, so fine. The Warriors, Clay is a dog shit playmaker, but they have Steph and Dre, so they're fucking beautiful. They're fine. Like, not many teams can get away with that scheme of like, all right, even some of these teams has point guards too. Like the bubble, they had Rondo, they had Caruso, who were really good playmakers, so it wasn't just LeBron. This team has Smart, who's at times can be that, but sometimes he becomes erratic. Malcolm Brogdon, he fell under the spell, but sometimes he becomes erratic. And then Derek White, as good as he is as a shooter and a defender, he's not the go-to playmaker that you want either. So it's just Tatum, and then it's a bunch of like, all right, they'd show me at times, guys, but nobody ever consistent that can just slow the pace down. Like, all right, we're going to get into our sets. We're going to do this and that. The game is getting out of hand, and I think Boston has to figure that shit out because Smart is the heart and soul. He's been your heart and soul, and nobody's ever denying that. He brings the energy, and he brings that type of vibe to your team. He's your grit and your grind, but when it's time to slow down the game, when it's time when you guys are rattled, Smart is one of the people that are rattled. Smart is one of the people that are complaining to the refs, missing possessions because he keeps complaining to the refs when he's one of your oldest players on the team, him and Al or Horford, of course, and he's supposed to be setting the tone, settling the young guys down. And I think that is a big, big issue for you. Like, as much as we give shit for Draymond punching his teammates, this, that, and the third, one thing he going to do is he going to make sure he gets that energy out of his teammates on the court, in the locker room to come out and give their best performance. And I think as Smart's supposed to do that, it's tough when he's one of the biggest guys who's always complaining and stuff like that.
And I think this series also showed something is the fact that I don't care how good they were last year defensively.
I am screaming.
Rob Williams and Marcus Smart are not DPOY level defenders at this point in time.
Smart, I would say Rob still looks
he's
really
always
good,
hurt.
But Smart has definitely fallen off from last season.
I think Rob, when he's out there, he's healthy.
I thought he was really good.
He's a great rim protector. Yeah. He's a good switchable big. The problem is though, he's always banged up. Offensively, he's just a lob threat, so you can't sometimes play him in certain matchups. But I think he's a DPO.
He can really good defender.
I think on the Rob front, he hasn't looked healthy this season.
No,
That's the issue.
The problem. Yeah.
I thought Miami, he looked about as healthy as I've seen him.
He did, and then Game 7, bro was fighting a stomach bug.
Yeah, I thought Rob looked pretty good. The smart issue, I get. I thought Marcus Smart for the entire of these playoffs was really good. He had his moments, of course, where, like you said, the turnovers and the decision making, like you have the one lob that's like 15 feet above the rim, right? There's things that happen in Marcus Smart's game where he does lose focus, and he should be the one that's kind of galvanizing the guys and calming them down. But I thought overall Marcus Smart had a really good playoff series. to get back to the topic of paying Jaylen Brown, I know a lot of people are, it's almost reminiscent of last year where Jason Tatum had a terrible finals. Now, we weren't saying trade Jason Tatum or anything. We still realized he was a great player, but very reminiscent because Jaylen Brown, we know he's better than this, right? I think everybody in the world knows Jaylen Brown is not the player we just saw these last 7 games against Miami. He was really bad. But I also know that the Celtics, and this is what I'm expecting him to say, I know the Celtics, Brad Stevens, are not going to be looking at this series, the 7-game sample, and saying we have to trade Jaylen Brown. For one, there's not a package out there that you are going to trade Jaylen Brown for that's going to make you a competitor. That's going to make you more competitive to go on to win an NBA Finals. If you have a package out there, I know a lot of people are saying Dame. Maybe Dame is the only player, but you're going to have the same issues with Dame that you will with Jaylen Brown in terms of contracts because he's making a ridiculous amount of money. Not in terms of play, but you're also getting a guy who's 33, 34 years old, who's going to be making 50, 60 million, just like Jaylen Brown. And you're going to have the same constraints with the new CBA in terms of MLE, making trades that you're going to have with Jaylen Brown because he's also under the Supermax. So the people who want Damian Lillard, I get it. You get a true point guard. But if your big issue is having the flexibility, Dame isn't gonna fix that.
Yeah, I think your flexibility is cooked regardless.
Is it?
What's the other option? I'm not trading Jaylen Brown for pieces. I'm not splitting $1 into 4 quarters and getting picks and role players.
I agree with you. I think with the new CBA, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are each eligible for 35% maxes. And when you give them that type of money, as they age, they're not going to have as much or as clear a supporting cast as they have now. And what we've run into with Jaylen Brown is he's hit his apex. 27 points per game, 7 rebounds. What he brings on both ends of the floor, I know his defense is inconsistent, is valuable to most teams in the league except the Celtics. Because what we've come to notice this postseason is that while it's nice to have a lot of wings in a wings-oriented league, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are redundant. They always have been, and they probably always will be. If this is the truth, you got to listen to it, man. There is another level to Jason Tatum's game as a post player.
I agree.
I don't think there's another level of Jaylen Brown's game. And I think what we're seeing from him right now at 26 is what he's going to be. So you look at all the teams in the league that desperately need and are searching for a star wing, Jaylen Brown would be a lot more useful to them, and he wouldn't be redundant. I use that point because Jaylen Brown doesn't complement Jason Tatum's biggest, I guess you would say, shortcoming. He's not an elite playmaker. He's elite in many areas. It's just not playmaking. And Marcus Smart's a good playmaker, but he's not that consistent, reliable presence. So in having Jaylen Brown,
Boston just goes get a point guard. Go get a point guard, Boston. It's that easy.
They have
it's
3.
Not that easy.
They have 3 on the roster.
They have 3. Yes. No, but you said John. Yeah, you said he's reached his peak. He's reached his apex, and he's not as good of a playmaker. He's inconsistent on defense. So aren't you overvaluing Jaylen Brown? Because you just admitted all his faults. You just admitted all the bad things about him, but said he's valuable in the league. People value two-way wings that are consistent on both ends, and he's not.
There are 2 levels. There's a level the Celtics are trying to go to.
Mm-hmm.
That's winning a championship.
Yeah.
Then there's about 25 other teams in the league. They're like, we just want to get to the second round.
25 other teams don't need Jaylen Brown.
And what Jaylen Brown brings, well, let's say 20. But Jaylen
25 teams wouldn't take Jaylen Brown with open arms.
But the problem is, it can be 20 teams available for Jaylen Brown, but 20 teams aren't going to be available that Boston are going to have something that Boston needs.
But the need is
different.
And for Jaylen Brown, the reason we're so critical of him is because of the expectations. Last 6 years, no duo is more winning than these 2.
Yeah.
But you're not looking for them to be a second seed. No one cares if the Celtics win 52 games next year. That's not the point. It's the same thing we talk about Philadelphia. We want to see the Celtics get over that hump and win a championship. That's the expectations now.
Philly's got to get to the 3rd round.
Well, they did that this year and they did that last year.
The 3rd round, Philly?
Joel, let me ask you a question.
Out loud, but
Joel, let me ask you a question. Would you trade Jaylen Brown for the 3rd overall pick if that meant you get Scoot?
It doesn't help us win right now. You're going to bring in a rookie, no playoff experience.
Here's the thing, right? I agree with you. It doesn't help you win. Portland would not do that, is what you're saying. And I agree with you.
Also,
if
the
I'm
money.
Portland, I'm not doing. Well, does it not work?
You have to throw in.
Grant would not be on the team, right? I'm wrong. Jeremy Grant's not.
$30 million.
It's almost like if they would have maybe traded Jaylen Brown for De'Aaron Fox years ago, they might be in a better position. But
so I only say that with the idea of to finish the thought and maybe to sell you on it, Joel. it does not help you win right now, but we have reiterated on multiple points. Jason Tatum is 25 years old. He hasn't reached to most his prime yet. He's only going to get better at basketball. Now, I don't disagree with you. It does not help you get better for the next season, right? And maybe there is a world where Scoot Henderson can reach the level of Jaylen Brown, and with the way that conversations are had, Scoot Henderson. Say that one more time.
Might be the best point guard prospects in.
Correct. He's
very. I love
prospect. I only say that for the playmaking aspect of things. But go ahead, Joel.
I understand Portland is a hot conversation because of the Dame stuff. They had the third overall pick. I'm going to propose something different. And it's not what you saw on Twitter.
Thank God,
because
that shit sucked.
It was not bad.
Oh, was it?
Harden.
It was Harden for Jaylen Brown.
Oh my God,
Lost me there.
Harden is the floor general point guard they need for sure.
He's also a stinker. He's a stinker.
What did Jaylen Brown just do?
So why do they want another
stinker?
One
time.
In a bad series.
They're not going to trade a stinker for a stinker.
James Harden has had great. What are you talking about? No, don't act like he's not. What are you talking about? Get out of here. Whatever.
Past Houston. That's not.
He hasn't been healthy.
Okay.
He hasn't had basketball.
He was healthy this year. He's got to play with a big man pick and roll. Yeah, span pick and roll. He wasn't letting Harden do what Harden does. Now, This is my proposal.
He won't lose him.
This is a different proposal, and I think you guys are gonna like this. And I might actually spark some eyeballs, and I might spark some light bulbs.
You'll definitely spark some eyeballs.
I look at these two teams. The Celtics. What do they need? I think they need more consistent 3-point shooting. They need a floor general point guard.
Yeah.
That's number one.
This other team, the Memphis Grizzlies, need a wing. What if the Grizzlies and the Celtics come together, propose a trade, Tyus Jones and Desmond Bane for Jaylen Brown?
I've seen that too. But neither of those guys, it's a world where you're going to be trading Jaylen Brown, and I think he's better than both of those players.
Desmond Bane is definitely close to Jaylen Brown.
24.
He could be. He could be one day. Desmond Bane could be. He's a better shooter. He's a player who can average 20 points per game. He plays good defense.
He's far from number 2, though.
He is far from number 2, but I think getting Tyus Jones, who's a true floor general point guard, who can facilitate an offense, is definitely a plus.
Last we saw Tyus Jones, he was not good.
Like how far can he go up?
He's going to be a career 40% 3-point shooter, can average 20 a game.
You're going to have to pay Desmond Bane too in a year.
What was he at this year? 22, 23?
Definitely not 23.
It was like 21, right? He got hurt in the beginning. That's what it was.
21 and a half.
21 and a half.
The Warriors' first-round pick next year and more assets.
He averaged 21 and a half this year and shot 41% from 3, and he's a better playmaker than Jaylen Brown.
Desmond Bane's the perfect 3, but if he's the number 2 on that Celtics team, they have a new issue. He doesn't give you enough shot creation. But that's a good idea you have there.
I don't know.
Spark nothing.
I think you're building probably a more complete team with Tyus Jones, a true floor general point guard. Obviously, we know the turnover numbers.
He did shoot 32% in the first round.
Who?
Desmond Bane.
He was arguably the best offensive player.
But I think if that does happen in a year from now, if Tatum's showing up and we're looking at Desmond Bane averaging 18, we're going to say Boston needs a better number 2.
This is fact.
We just seen Miami make the finals with somebody averaging 19 as a second option in the conference finals.
He's also backpacking the defense.
Who's backpacking the defense?
Are you talking about Bam?
No, I'm talking about Jimmy Butler. I'm talking about the Heat.
We also have the opponent shooting terrible from 3.
No,
Jaylen Brown doesn't show up. Al
Horford.
Horford, like the Celtics outside of Tatum, Al Horford could not shoot the ball. I mean, defense, you could say he, gave it all out to Embiid, but he went from shooting 45% in the regular season to a guy who was missing wide open shots. Brogdon was off basically the entire playoffs. Derek White was showing up for sure, especially in this conference finals. But I think if you make this move, you're just going to look at it and say the Celtics need more star power. If Tatum is able to make another leap and he's able to become a really good playmaker, a borderline elite level playmaker, I really think that's what's going to take Boston over the top, because we know Jason Tatum, he was 4th in MVP, first team All-NBA back-to-back years. Like, we already know he's bona fide top 7-8 player in the world. But I think if he wants to take that next step and without kind of shaking up this whole team and keeping Jaylen Brown, I think he has to take another step and become a top 3 to 4 player consistently. And then Boston is able to kind of deal with the other stuff that they have going on with the playmaking, the late game execution. If he's able to take over, especially in those late moments as a playmaker and a scorer, I think Boston can level up.
Hasn't he already, though? Like, he's already been that closer.
He's been leveling up consistently, but I think right now no one has him as a top 3-4 player in the world.
think Tatum can still get better.
I think so too.
We all agree on that.
I think Tatum can still get better. John mentioned it. Jaylen Brown and Tatum's game don't don't coincide. They don't coexist.
Because of Jaylen Brown.
It's redundant. Jaylen Brown is an ISO scorer who on offense, he's just a bucket getter. He gets his ISOs. That's fine. That's all good and dandy. But outside of that, he doesn't offer you much in terms of playmaking. And I know we've mentioned that point plenty of times. I just look at a realistic scenario because everybody that's offering these Celtics trade packages, Portland is far from winning now. So paying a player like Jaylen Brown $300 million would be a major mistake.
They're also desperate.
They're desperate.
I was going to say, it's already a mistake that they're entertaining ideas for the number 3.
I agree. Any player the Celtics get back, if it's not Dame in a Portland trade, does not help them win now.
That's wrong. Because the whole reason we're looking to not give Jaylen Brown $300 million is so the Celtics can maintain that flexibility. I think the best move would be getting that young star on a rookie contract where he's making nothing.
The third pick.
You trade Jaylen Brown straight up for the third pick.
Brandon Miller, possibly.
I will look.
No, it's got to be Scoot.
No, if it's the third pick,
well,
it could be.
It's Mitch.
I agree.
I can't take Brandon Miller second.
I'm sorry.
We're not sure. We don't know yet.
I think we're pretty confident his best game was against South Carolina. The Hornets are probably going to Brandon Miller.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think they're going to take Brandon Miller.
But you have to look at both outcomes. If they take take Scoot, and you're talking about the third pick and probably somebody else. I'm assuming you're talking about Simons.
Hell yeah.
So you're talking about a backcourt of Simon, Scoot, and then Tatum, and then
that's all day.
I think Simons would honestly come off the bench.
I would come off the bench.
For a guy that's averaged
I don't think they put Marcus Smart on the bench, truthfully.
Well, I think
Anthony Simons played the 2 guard in Portland.
I think
they won 35
But Smart could play the 2. He played the 2 to start his career.
To make the salary.
Was that Anthony's fault? Come on,
Marcus
Smart
was
lazy.
Won in that trade.
Oh, to get shipped out? You're saying Brown and Smart?
Him or Brogdon?
Why would now this just doesn't make sense.
I think
Portland.
Brogdon before.
Why would
I agree.
I
agree.
Brown, Marcus Smart for the number 3 pick and Anthony Simons?
It's a bad deal. That's a bad deal.
That's not even a desperation move. That's just dumb.
Well, now you get a 2 that can defend at an elite level and a 3 instead of having 2 1s.
And now you're peaked at cap. You don't have money to pay Jeremy Grant. You still have Nurkic as your center.
They're just looking for stars, dude.
And you have Nasir Little.
I don't.
It's already dumb
because I know Portland is desperate, and I agree. I think it would be a stupid
that
move.
Desperate. If they do it, John, shout out to you. You fucking called it.
Listen, I don't think that move helps Boston win now, though. I don't.
But this is a long.
It doesn't.
Game, right?
It is a long game. Tatum is 24.
I disagree though.
Yeah.
Boston has been
25, excuse me.
Boston has been at the top of the East.
Into 4 ECFs in the last 6
They're
years.
not in a long game. They think they can win every year.
Let's not act like Boston
Tatum
is
is
the
still
bottom
young.
feeder. They've been in the conference finals every
But
year,
to get
bro.
somewhere you've never been, you have to do something you've never done.
They had a 3rd pick and a 4th and a 2nd pick. They've been in this shit. They know what it's like to be at the bottom of the barrel.
No, we got
I'm
the
saying
6
with
But they came up. That was a come
Smart
up.
was our only pick.
Shit.
This is a
Smart
team that
top
was
7.
up 2 games on
6.
the Warriors in the finals, and if Tatum plays better offensively, they win that series. And I mentioned this last year. Most of the time, most of the time when we talk about young teams and they fail in the finals, we always say, well, this team's going to be back next year. They'll be here again. We never know, because a mistake front offices make a lot of the times is that they tear up the core too soon. I think it makes sense tearing it up if it's a win now move that's going to get them over the top soon.